Aloha, friends and family, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Embodied Healing Self. So, this week's guest comes to us from Sedona, Arizona. Her name is Amalia Camateros, and she's originally from Australia. She is a shaman, a naturopathic doctor. She hosts retreats, she has a course, and I'm super excited to invite her to the show this week. She comes to me through Josh Trent of Wellness Force and his lovely partner, Carrie, as you may remember, are recording together on Truth Medicine. So I'm so grateful for our connection. Thank you so much, Amalia, for being here today.
Thank you for having me here, Jen. Thanks, everybody. Hello, aloha. Many blessings.
Aloha. Yes, thank you so much. So, as I was preparing for our session together and just taking a look at your website and all of the work that you do, the retreats that you host, and the courses that you offer, and the healings that you offer through your shamanic training, your wisdom of the stones, I was just getting really excited to dive deeper into a couple of things that you shared on your website around healing and clearing the entanglements of what I like to call core wounds and how they show up as glitches. And I'm curious, before we begin, if you'd be willing just to share a little bit about your journey onto the path of becoming a shaman. Is it something that you always were, that you always embodied? Was there an experience that really invited you in? How did that open up for you?
Well, yes, I have always had that within me. So I feel, for those of you who understand past lives or believe in that, I feel definitely that I've had lifetimes of connecting with Mother Earth and the wisdom teachings that she offers. And also, as a little child, I always was seeing into the darkness. I was always able to go deeper than other people. And that was a constant current running through my life. Compassion was very big for me. I brought in a lot of compassion this lifetime. So where others might judge family members, I had a complete understanding of why they were like that, why emotionally they were so unavailable. I would understand it as much as it would hurt and it would be uncomfortable as a child, because of course every child needs love and acceptance. I always understood the back side of things. One would call it the shadow realm. And as a consequence of having dynamics in family that was so trying and challenging and difficult, like most of the light workers that come in with that kind of scenario, that kind of footprint, in order to really bloom and grow, and as fertilizer, it actually grows us into more of who we are and why we're here. So I had a lot of fertilizer, shall we say. And again, not unlike most of us who would find solace in nature and want to be outside. What child doesn't want to be outside? Most children want to be outside and play. And I would go outside and just be with nature and fall in love with the little lines in the leaves and the moss. And I still do the same thing. I still stop on walks with people, and I'm the one that'll stop and smell the flowers or be enamored by a bloom or a spring that's springing forth. I notice these things. It's always been part of my gathering force. And then along the way, I actually left home when I was 18 and hitchhiked around Australia, actually, and it was fun. It was so great to travel around at 18, hitchhiking around Australia. That was pretty safe. It was safe back then. And then I lived with some Aboriginals when I was 18, who also taught me how to be on a deeper level with just the beingness without having to make a story about it. They definitely taught me how to, I guess, when I say I guess, I'm imagining now that it's part of the dream time that they offer. So I was able to step into that a lot more with some of the Aboriginals when I lived with some of them in northern Western Australia in a town called Broome. And Then from there, traveled and hitchhiked to the other side of Australia, where I ended up living at 18 with 80-year-old people who were really into the Deva spirits of Mother Earth, the fairies and the Devas and the elementals. And so there, again, I find myself in another bit of training with these elderly people who are 85 and 90, and I'm 18. Being immersed in that kind of field of being aware that there's nature spirits and how they talk with us and how they work with us on the land. And so I had a bit of a training there as well. Then I came back to Melbourne, down in Victoria, Melbourne, southeast of Australia, and began a course of becoming a naturopathic doctor. And so as you can see, the thread of always being in the natural way, the natural life, the natural instinct, the natural imprint, the natural information, the simplicity and the power of nature, Mother Earth. So I became a naturopathic doctor. And after about 15 years of that, I started to sneak over to my next door neighbor's land and just take my clothes off and be that wild sort of shamanic being that I always was. But I had land that I was living on, and I had built a medicine wheel on that land. So I was always interested in stones as well, the rocks and the stones, and made a medicine wheel and would sit there and listen to spirit and what it wanted to say to me, and go and sneak into the next door neighbor's land and no one was ever there, and take my clothes off and gather things, gather shells and gather bones and gather feathers and make medicine wheels and make natural things to give to people. And so that started me on a new path in my naturopathic career after 15 years of really going deeper into immersing more into the emotional field of what's causing physical ailments, rather than just treating the root cause of a physical complaint. Still going to the root cause, but going to the root cause of what I learned as the root cause, which was the emotional field.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I want to just kind of pause there for a moment. I feel like what you just said is something that has been said on this show in many different ways. And I know that my community, my listeners know that I started out in functional medicine and holistic health. So there was always that element of the herbs and nutrition in the earth. And then in the same learning that there's really this deeper kind of imprinting that happens. And it's in that emotional realm, that emotional part of our body. And so what I'm hearing you say is that you started noticing, even as a naturopathic doctor, that as you were in service to your patients, your community, that you started noticing that there was this emotional component to the healing.
Yeah, yes, and thank you. And as mentioned earlier in the piece I just said, I was always aware of that emotional feel, the emotional background. I came in with immense compassion and I still have that compassion for people who are not fortunately feeling the grace or feeling their aliveness. And the aliveness is a very big factor to me, because I was raised with a beautiful mother who was very depressed, who became extremely depressed and had to be hospitalized at least 4 times in my life. So she was either really super high or really super low, most of the time low. So the animation and the aliveness became very strong for me, a very strong factor in the purpose of our life, is to feel the aliveness, to feel that spirit flowing through our body. So as you know, as an embodiment therapist, it's how important that is.
Yeah, I love that. I'm just going to repeat what you said. You said the purpose of our life is to feel that flow of spirit through us. That's wonderful. Thank you for that.
Yes, and I regard myself as an antenna of spirit. And I teach others that too, that we are antennas Is that how you say it in America? Antennae or antenna?
Antenna. Yeah. It's like
Antenna.
we're receiving, we're receiving that energy. And
And then we
then
transmit it
we
just like an antenna. Yeah.
yes,
And
exactly.
so, that's why I work with trees so much now. I started with stones. I wrote a book about stones, listening to the stone being speaking. And now I'm putting out a course on becoming a tree, where you can, the antenna of that tree, where the roots are in the ground and our trunk is tall and strong and the branches are open and wide, and we receive the light and give it to the earth. And we also receive the love of earth and emit that out into the growth and into the production, into the flourishment of who we are.
Yes, they are our teachers, aren't they? The trees and the rocks, the stones. So tell me a little bit about how you were called to Sedona from Australia. And I know there was a whole, you had a very interesting life leading up to that as a naturopathic doctor, and even the naturopathic doctor for INXS, and all kinds of exciting things. And then at some point in
INXS,
time,
the rock band INXS, yes.
yeah, exactly. So, there's this very colorful experience that you had, and it's
Yes.
and as you became as you it's almost like a remembering of, being out in nature and sitting in the medicine wheel and listening to the wisdom of the earth. And at some point in time from this experience in Australia, you were called to move to Sedona. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about that, because you wrote a book on this. Is that
I
right? The
did.
Spirit of the Stones.
Spirit of the Stones, yes. I was maddened by being so busy. I was maddened by being young and having to deal with a lot of dynamics. 14 practitioners. I was married to a beautiful, beautiful man, and he actually expressed his emotions very, very strongly all the time. So it was a bit much to have that kind of anger constantly at me, as much as there was beauty in our relationship. And dealing with bank managers and family dynamics and my own self and my marriage and building a house and 14 practitioners, and that's a lot for a young person. I may have been 25, having to hold all that together. And I've always been a priestess. I would say I'm most predominantly a shamanic priestess, and I've always been that. So even in those days, and that was quite a while ago, like 30 years ago now, I had made as I had mentioned earlier, I'd made a medicine wheel, and I would go and sit in there, and that was my space. No one else could go in there really, unless they were going in there for some sort of ceremony, but it was our land, so really nobody would go in there unless I was doing or offering a ceremony for the women. And so it would be a space where I would be able to go to. My husband wasn't ever in there. He wasn't interested. That was not his calling. So I would just go and sit. And I was so exhausted, and I want to say and maddened. That's the word that comes up. That I would just go into that stone circle and just sit. And I by then had been taught and learned and participated in so many different meditation retreats and yoga retreats and rebirthing retreats and all sorts of types of things, that I was so exhausted that I would just go and sit in that stone circle and just be, not even do a meditation, not even do a breathing, just sit. And it's a bit of a clue in a way, isn't it? That we don't have to be doing anything. The more we can just be is where spirit goes, there you are. Oh, well, let's give to you. Oh, there you are. So just in the beingness is an open doorway. And so in that beingness, I received a word called Sedona. And it wasn't something I'd heard as a physical word, and nor was it my word, because I'd never known it before. It was a spirit word, and it was almost like a thunderous way it was said, Sedona, like it absolutely riveted me. And as soon as I heard that, my spine kind of sitting like this, clicked up 3 times. And my hands, I heard a click, and my hands opened up, and I was like this for about, I don't know how long. It might have been 8 minutes, 20 minutes. But I was very, very aware that this Sedona thing, whatever it was downloading into my hands. Now, in those days, we didn't have computers. I didn't have a computer then, but I knew the word was told to me, downloading. And I was in the zone, exactly how Sedona's energy is. It's actually a twilight zone between worlds. It's like between the veil, between this reality and the other. So I was in that very still, embodied space. No thoughts, just Sedona. And after that had finished, I was thinking how interesting that is. I wonder what Sedona is. I mean, this is an unusual experience. This is not something I conjured. What is this? And I thought Sedona was a woman, like Madonna, like some goddess was calling me to study her. I don't know. And as it comes to be, actually, Sedona is named after a woman, Sedona Schneppeli. So it's perfectly, I was right. But after that, the next night after that, I had a dream that I was climbing a wooden staircase going up in a zigzag. And every time I'd go to a platform, there was a bowl of sweets. In Australia, we call them lollies. A bowl of sweets to eat a few to give you energy to go to the next. And I did this 3 times. And on the 3rd platform, I looked out and I saw these red rocks, mammoth, huge red rocks. And on the staircase in the dream, I'm stopped and I say, oh, I'm in Sedona. This is Sedona. And that's my first hint that it was a place. And I still didn't even know if it was true. I thought it was just a dream. Until the next morning, this woman comes into my clinic for a session. And her name was Maxine, and she looked like she was kind of really, I don't know, I guess shamanic. I didn't know what shamanic looked like back then, even though I was entering it. She had the beads and she had the long flowing gown and she had red hair, just like the rocks of Sedona. Like when I came here, I thought, oh, that's like Maxine's hair. How weird is that? And Maxine, you know, after I said, hello, Maxine, how can I help you today? How can I be of service to you today? She just went into this trance and started channeling. And that's very rare back then, 30 years, about how I need to go to this place that is calling me and that you must go and you will find yourself and you will help everybody. And all this came up. And in the book, I explain a bit further what happened that was just outrageous, but I won't go into it now. But it never happened again, but it was some sort of tracking that she had done with me. And finally I said to her, what is this place you're telling me? She said, Sedona. And it was the same sort of riveting Sedona. And by now, the 3rd hit of Sedona, I just had broke down. And I said to her, Maxine, give me 2 minutes. I laid on the massage table and cried my eyes out. I just lost it, but not too much because I have a client there looking at me. But the tears were like burning tears dropping off into the table, off my cheek. And I then 2 minutes, I said 2 minutes, okay, honor that. And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's do the session. And after that session, I said, well, where is this place? What is it? And she goes, I've got photos. And it was the same rocks that I saw in my dream. So it's very synchronous and visionary and very shamanic. That's a very shamanic calling. And every 3 days, I promise you, I promise everybody, every 3 days, honestly, I would have something almost as profound as that. So it was meant to be for me to come to Sedona. And it was not only 1 year of that, because it took me 1 year to unpack the business. And by then, after 15 years, I was in a great challenge and indecision about staying or leaving my marriage. So after that 1 year, I really tested spirit and had to make sure that it was not me running away or creating something really weird for myself to have an excuse to back out of the marriage. And that's not what I was doing. But I tested spirit so severely, and it came back in my face to the point where I just went on my knees and I said, I'm yours. Take me.
And surrendered.
I had
Yeah.
to, because, you know, it's in the book, and I don't want to go into it now because I
Yeah.
know we've got other things to talk about. But, you know,
Yeah.
it took a year, and then it took another year of more omens and dreams to get me over here. You know, it took me a year to unpack the marriage and the business and everything, do it perfectly so I can be absolutely present for spirit when I came.
Such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Two things that I love that you shared. One was in the beginning that you shared, what I want to invite the listeners to just sort of lean into is this idea that when you were in your medicine wheel, you weren't doing meditation, you were just being. And that when we talked about ourselves as being an antenna, it's like, I think of, there's no interference in that state. And so we become so open to receiving that the only thing that we're receiving is just pure light and truth.
Yes.
And that even the act of doing meditation is still an act of doing.
Absolutely.
And it seems like it's like a journey. I know in my own personal journey, there was a period of time where I woke up and I meditated every day for 20 minutes. And now I'm in the practice of living the meditation daily in the experience and just noticing in those moments, you know, rather than having the routine of it. I like to begin the day in a certain way, but looking at that as a way of being, not something that we do. I just wanted to, I love that you shared that.
Absolutely.
And the other part that you shared that I love is that once you received this download, it doesn't just happen right away. You took the time to discern, like, is this, am I, with all of my awareness, am I escaping something? Like, there's my marriage and my business and all these things that I'm really not, you know, this is an opportunity to leave and to start over. But like, where did this creation, this download come from? Is it from spirit, or did I, you know, did I create this in some way to just kind of get out of here?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that we all have those moments where it's important to, and this is kind of the gateway into what we're going into, is the, is recognizing the, you know, that what the shaman does is the shaman sees the light and the shadow in wholeness. And so recognizes that these experiences and every decision that we have, and sometimes we start to notice patterns, which is what I want to get into. But
Mm-hmm.
it's that moment of discerning, like, is this part of that programming, that pattern, or is this really the download from spirit that is moving me to my soul's illumination or expression? So
Mm-hmm.
can you tell me a little bit about how that works, for how you allow spirit to move through you when you work with others, as they start to notice? A lot of the work that shamans do is that emotional healing, that those past lives, those patterns, that reprogramming, which you call glitches.
Mm-hmm.
And you do healing and clearing work around that. It could be from past lives, it could be family patterns. So you had your own experience, you knew all this already, so you had to check in with yourself and say, is that what's happening here, or is this really a spirit thing? And it took you 2 years to get there. So how do you, tell me a little bit more about that work? That, tell me about glitches, tell me about reprogramming, what's happening in, because we're all experiencing this in our own way. So where does that come from as it relates to the work of a shaman?
Yeah. Firstly, I want to say that it took so long because I was terrified. I mean, to be honest with you, all these amazing things were outlandish. Like, you know, even shape-shifting things that were happening, and visions and synchronisms and dreams, it's too much. It was like too much. And, you know, let me digest this as I can really embody it, rather than, oh, you know, going off. I'm not like that at all. And that's, I think, what people and my clients and people who are attracted to my work are attracted to. You know, I'm Australian, I'm down to earth, I cut to the chase. I don't pussyfoot, I don't waste people's time. I'm there and I see where the hidden part is. And that's been a training since a child for me. You know, that's always been with me. But when people come and when you're saying, how do I work these emotional dynamics or untangle the entanglement of these glitches? I've always a strong believer in the root of the problem. The root, the root, the root, the bottom line root. And that's kind of like going through the ego, you know, moving through the layers of the ego into the very chrysalis of what is hidden behind there. And
just like the naturopathic doctor, right?
Yes.
Like you started, yeah.
Like a detective in a way. It's kind of like I'm a tracker. I would call it a tracker, tracking. And, you know, I observe the body language. The body never lies. Someone could, like, you know, there's so many people in Sedona where you say, how are you? It's not so much now because I've worked on them for 20 years.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I first came here and for many years, oh, so good, amazing, all the time. You know, it's like, come on, that doesn't look real. That's not real. So it's obvious to other people what we're hiding, really. You could be, I could be saying to someone, you could be saying to me, how are you? And if I have an emotional fear or a belief I'm not good enough, I'm kind of saying, don't look at that. Don't look at that. I'm good, but don't look at that. And yet you're seeing that. We're all intuitive beings. And so, number one, I trust the body. The body never lies. So I'll watch the incongruences of what's said and what's done. And that's really big for me in people's lives. Like if I'm looking at somebody that I'm going to invest time and energy with, I will see actually where their congruency, it's very important. You know, what they say and what they do, is it in line? Yeah.
I just want to pause for a moment there because I think that I want to invite you to go a little bit deeper on just speaking in some way to what embodiment is, because it's how we be, not what we do, not what we say, right? You're talking about that congruency and that resonance. It's an energy thing. It's the way that you're so, and I also just want to say for listeners who may be new to shamanic work that this is intimate work. And so as you're speaking in a way of like, you're really present with the person before you work with them to see if there's congruence for you to be in that space with them.
Yes, absolutely. So embodiment is, well, the word body is in it, isn't it? Embodiment. So it's about feeling what you're feeling in the body. I'm not saying as a muscle that's been, you know, exercising so much. I'm saying the emotional energy is actually felt in the physical body, in the body. So,
which is not the heart. It's actually dropping down a little further.
Yeah, all the way down. And you could say into every cell of your body if you really want to invite more of that spirit in. It's not just certain chakras that it goes down in or one particular area. The way I would say embodiment is bringing the light and the awareness and the spirit all the way down into the root. I'm a root girl. I used to have a boyfriend and he used to call me Diggy Mama.
For root girl.
Diggy Mama. And
so,
it's kind of true because by allowing it to go all the way into the deepest part of our being, to me is the root, because the root chakra. Now, a chakra, as we said before, is similar to that antenna. It's a center of light. You know, 7 centers of light in our body, and it's not something you can find physically. It's an energetic center, 7 centers. It's beginning from the root chakra, which is between the anal sphincter and the genitalia, right down there at the base. And that's the earth root, that's the earth chakra, connecting to the earth and rooting, bringing all of that spirit all the way through, not just up here, but all the way in and down. And that's one of the first things I teach in my course, called Stronger Than Ever, about bringing it in and down. That's embodiment.
Yeah, I think of the root chakra as like there's an energetic umbilical cord between us and the earth, from the root chakra to the earth.
Very nice.
And there it in the spiritual community, one of the things that I've witnessed is not embodiment. In fact, I went through it myself, where there was an avoidance pattern of ascension, and sort of like leaving the body in time traveling and meditation. And I just want to speak to that why we're talking about embodiment is because it's allowing, if we're the antenna, it's allowing receiving that energy into our wholeness as a human. It's not us trying to project out and sort of like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's like a seed that's planted into the earth. It's not thrown up and it's hanging up there taking root and flowering. We're like seeds. I see ourselves as. We need to go into the soil of consciousness, allow ourselves to immerse into the matrix of the earth, the mother energy, and steep into that. And often I do sessions where I allow people to die into the earth, not physically, but just their ego. Just allow their ego to drop in and let go and surrender. And it's a restful place. Why shouldn't we rest in peace while we're alive? Why is it whole saying rest in peace when you're dead? That's really weird to me. So a lot of the time I'm allowing people to rest in peace while they're alive. And this whole descension happens first before anything ascends. The plant goes into the soil before it ascends.
And almost like I'm thinking of like the tree drops a seed or an acorn before it grows into another.
Yeah, we have to
tree.
let the seed take place. And I have on my website, I have something I made 20 years ago. I downloaded it from myself, from my own spirit, called The Seed of Creation. It's on my website. And we'll put the link down for my website so people can go to it if you wish. But it's called The Seed of Creation. No, I don't even think I have that on there. Actually, it's on my course. Sorry, it's in my course. But it's a seed of creation, and how, we're seeds of light that came down to the earth and cracked in two. And we cracked into the male and the female. And then there's this whole relationship between the two and how we're nurtured by Mother Earth. And it's a beautiful little story with didgeridoo in the background, and it's a danceable thing as well. But anyway, I want to complete what you were saying before about the glitch work, because
yes,
I know that's really important. I want to make sure we get that piece in for your listeners, that there's things that have happened to us, whether it's we lost a dolly that we were so close to, or someone stole your little truck as a child, or your father was abusive in any way possible, or you were neglected, or whatever it was that created a traumatic, I call it a glitch point, a traumatic experience that the child itself doesn't have the emotional makeup, the maturity of that makeup to deal with such strong emotions. And we all know how survival based our emotions were, especially as teenagers. Like anything that would come, it's the end of the world, and heightened emotions. So as children and teenagers, especially children, we don't know how to deal with those emotions. And so what happens is it gets filed back. We don't know how to express. A lot of us are not allowed to express anger or emotion, or nor were our parents around. A lot of us, they were working to even have some sort of feedback of, am I okay in this situation? So the brain, the mind actually files it back into the subconscious, and it stays there as an alertness, on guard constantly, because the ego, in its all good merit, is there to protect us from feeling pain. That's what it's there for, protect us from feeling pain. One of its major jobs is that. And so if you've experienced some sort of pain glitch point as a child, that is going to register. It's in the subconscious. So anything like that that happens in the future, like, like I'll give you an example. When I was 10, we were asked at school to give a talk, and it was huge for me. And I come from a Greek Egyptian background, so I wasn't allowed to talk. I just have to be seen and not heard as a woman, as a girl too. So I'm now doing the American thing, because in Australia, it wasn't that common that kids would come up and talk on stage. So to me, it was like, oh my God, this is so American. You know, I see this on stage, on TV. And we were told to talk on a subject that we were interested in. Now, I was interested. I saw on my father's newspaper called The Truth newspaper. So I was thinking, oh, it's truth information. And there was a spaceship on there, like, oh, a spaceship lands, da, 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 da. Now, my father as a child used to gather the children. He has had experiences with space people, and he used to gather the children and tell us about spaceships and the aliens. And isn't that kind of weird? I was raised with a father who had experiences already. That's pretty amazing. And so when I saw the spaceship, I thought, oh, I'm confident with this. My father's talked to me about this. It's part of me. And I'll go and talk about spaceships. And I went on stage and I felt really confident. It was like the world was at my feet. It was like my dharma, my purpose that was me, to talk on stage. I did a great job. All the kids were enthralled. I had them in the palm of my hands. I looked around like, wow, this is easy for me. I can do it. And then the teacher said, and she was a strict teacher. She was a gnarly, strict teacher. She shouldn't have been a teacher, but she said, where did you get, very, very good, everyone's got it. Where did you get your information from? And I said, The Truth newspaper. And straight away she said, get off stage, you bad, disgusting girl. Get off stage. You don't belong on the, get off. You should be ashamed of yourself. I had no idea. And so it killed me in a sense. Like I didn't even know how to process that feeling. And so it took me, as an adult and as a teacher and as a shamanic practitioner, it took me a long, many, possibly 20 years to come around to be able to speak this way in public. Because the ego goes, don't do that. Don't do that again. We can't afford for you to feel that shame again. So somehow there'd be a diversion or a sabotage or something that would happen, because that memory is saying, don't do that again. Remember last time, it was so painful. And so that's where I would go with people to the glitch point and take them back to the childhood, have a talk with them, ask the child, what does it need? And to work with it as a separate energy, not in yourself, because it's very difficult to work with things that deep in yourself. But if you have the inner child that you can address and give to, just like as children, as little girls, we had the dollies that we were able to say, it's okay, I love you, even if nobody else does, which is really, we're talking about ourselves. So taking the backtrack, time traveling, I call it time traveling, time traveling back to that spot, changing it, not unlike a lot of healers, we all do this, changing the feeling back then, and then that affects the now moment.
Sort of like a reprogramming.
And
what I'm noticing is, and so here's sort of my perception of what I'm hearing you say, is that when this trauma happens, that subconsciously we may disconnect from our body, or we perceive that we disconnect or separate, which is sometimes referred to as a soul fragmentation. And that in order to heal it, it's almost like we can go back and see that it was whole and not separate. It was never the wound.
It's more about going back to the feeling. That's all.
Right. So then we're going back. There's an energy shift. Then we're going back into the body again. See, so So it's like we disassociate from the body, from the pain or the trauma,
That's
and then
right.
we go back into the body, which is the feeling,
And
we
own
sort
it.
of we own it and reprogram it and sort of rewrite that story, so that
Yes,
subconsciously on a cellular level there's a new imprint
that's
that
exactly
we.
right.
And uh I'm
Exactly right.
guessing, does it probably take, does it take practice? I'm sure that once this happens we're going to be
Well, you can
invited.
do it. I can do it with a client there and then. It takes the person who is fully present and able to go there and not put their own imprints in. You know, it's about beingness. Like
A
my
clear
clients,
channel.
yeah, a lot of my
Yeah.
clients say, I feel like you were with me all the way you were with me, and it's true. And it is about changing the imprint. But it all comes to me back into being present with the feeling without judgment. I mean, really,
Yes.
it really is about being able to, even if it's for a second, you did it. If you can purely just come back to the feeling without judgment and love and accept it, that's the healing. Really, that's the healing. You know, we could do all
Shift.
sorts of things and dance and drum and all sorts of things, and that's part of the foreplay or the theater to get you into that. It's important. But the ultimate, for me, the way I perceive it and the way my flow and current of energy moves is about the emotional embodiment. It's about feeling it without judgment. And then everything wants to be loved and accepted, everything, including our feelings.
Yeah, so it's like that moment of acceptance is the shift,
Yes.
and it's something that's felt in the body. And
Absolutely, absolutely. Embracing it, yes.
it's not,
Embracing,
it's not an acceptance here, and
mm,
it's not an acceptance in the heart. It's an acceptance, like, in, like, there's an energetic shift within the body.
it's a feeling. It's
Hmm.
purely a feeling. Now, we can look at the difference between emotions and feelings right now. This is going to be interesting. So,
Hmm.
a feeling, and I was told that I was learned this through some workshops I did in Australia with David Ward and Johnny King. And, you know, a whole lifetime ago, basically. And a feeling is a sensation. Hot, cold, constricted, soft, comfortable, warm, open. That's a feeling. An emotion is a feeling with a judgment attached to it.
Yes. Thank
And
you
so
for
that's
that
the,
clarity.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
difference right there. We can go into emotions, and that's why a lot of people go through emotions, and they keep on perpetuating the story. I did this. I was masterous of this. Oh, why me and the poor me and the victim and all this. And there comes a time where, luckily, desperation is the mother of transmutation. Luckily, right? Lucky for us.
Yeah.
No way, no more. I can't do it anymore. I've looked there, no. Looked there, no. Looked there, no. Looked, and I'm stuck in this moment. Okay, that's all there is. Boom, something shifts. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to, we're definitely going to put that in the show notes, that the feeling is a sensation, the emotion is a feeling with judgment. I think that's super important. And I use the same tool. I use the NBC tool of just feelings and needs. And there's such a misunderstanding around an emotion and a feeling is already. And also, you know, sometimes we turn our feelings and emotions into something that somebody else did to us, which, you know, we don't take full responsibility for how, what the sensation is in our body. So I think that's really important. So thank you for clarifying that.
And this is the emotional healing section we're talking about. And then there's a whole embodiment that happens when you're with nature, as you know, right?
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that, because that's really the shamanic priestess part element that you bring. It's why you're in Sedona. It's why you do the work in Sedona, which, I mean, really, well, it's not really you doing the work, right? Like, that's like you're just the facilitator for the energy around you.
No, the
Because
thing is that I have a different take on that. You know, people go,
mm,
oh, it's not me. It's not me at all. And I say, well, who is it? John and Betty? It is you, because you are the one that allowed the open channel. You're the one that's
right.
anchoring the energy. So I don't want to go into the ego of it's, You know, when people say, oh, it's not me. Well, you know what? Why can't it be you?
Well, I used the word, you're the facilitator. That was the word I
Yeah,
used.
there
So
you go.
you're facilitating, directing the energy, the spirit that's
Absolutely.
moving through people, which is where we started
Yeah.
this conversation.
And
Is
it's okay for us to own that we are actually participating in that. We're not, oh, it's not
yes.
me at all. Well, you know it is actually, because you earned it. You're the one being called to it. You're the one that let go your ego enough for allow that to go through. So let's own that and be in our mastery around that.
And what I was getting to when I said that is that you're actually co-creating, and what you're co-creating
Right.
with is the element of earth. So tell me a little bit how that manifests for you. You're allowing yourself to co-create with the spirit of the earth. Tell
Yes.
me about that part as it becomes part of the embodiment piece for.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful question. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, really you need to have some time, you know, give the presence of no time, which means you need to have a block of time. Kind of like, whoa. uh, and there's no rush. You're not rushing to do a hike, for example, or to do the exercise, for example, but it's more about having an intimate experience with an energy, a being, a mother energy, and opening to the mythos, opening to the dream time of that, where I could be like, I'm looking at a leaf right now that's just moving, and just really being with that little dancing leaf right now. That's all. And that in itself can teach me how to be in life. Not too much movement, not too drastic, not too much up and down, just a little bit of a sway. That's what it's teaching me right now when I see it. This sort of thing. Simple. It's like a child mind in a sense. But there's some spirit of the earth. Look how my hands, see how the body never lies. Spirit of the earth. I didn't think about doing that. My body just did it. That's balanced. It's a balanced form of energy that is neutral in a way, even though it's so full of magic and majesty. It really has an even keel. It's that neutral space of beingness that we're allowed finally to rest into, to rest in peace while we're alive, and to just sit and observe and open up that lens, open up the shamanic lens, open up the new mind. I guess I have that naturally, where, you know, the two hands open up and it's like I have an antenna. But
Just like that moment in
exactly.
time in Australia, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And I just thought of, this is the only time I've ever connected this piece up to that right now as we speak. So it's a matter of staying open. And children teach us this all the time. I know I'm always bringing it back to the simplest way of talking about it, because that's the way the mind can understand it more. The wisdom of the body can understand things in simplicity. It's not so complex. So just being open, and even if you have an emotion that you want to feel or express or complain to Mother Earth, it's okay to allow the vulnerability of what you're feeling into a safe place like that, because Mother Earth is safe that way. There's no judgment. Oh, there's nothing like that at all. In fact, how man and humanity is treating Mother Earth, and still there is this absolute
Unconditional love. Yeah.
unconditional love and provision. All of it
Oh, abundance. Like, just we're just so held.
still, always,
Yes.
eternally. You see, so there's that place you can go into, and that happens naturally. It's not something you have to go and do, oh, now. But, you know, even though I have got some of those exercises in my course, as we mentioned earlier, but it's a matter of being as still as what the earth is, being in that shaky movement, just like the leaf is. It's like a shape shifting. It's like if you can shape shift and become that. That happens to me very easily. I don't know about anybody else out there. I don't know if you tried that, but for me, it's
Yes.
very easy for me to be able to feel that tree and really become it. Like, how is it to stand in night sky as that tree? How is it to stand the roots in the ground? I feel it somehow, and I hope that other people get to feel that.
I do feel it, and
Great.
I have, and the more I practice it, the quicker it comes, and
Yes.
and I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, but my 12-year-old has lived this from, I mean, she's got a whole room full of rocks and sticks and and dragons and the whole thing. So, if and I cover so many things on this podcast that one of the threads that you've mentioned is just, again, like the simplest thing, listening to the children, like just let them guide you, let Mother Earth guide you, allow all the busyness of life and just the distractions and everything just fall away for a
Keep it away.
moment.
Keep it away. Like I often say to my clients, and often I say this, I've taught this in my book too, when you come into the trail, do a little clearing, to stand there. And I often do a little clearing like this and swoosh away all the city, all the mechanics of life, the worries, and leave it out there with a car park, car park. So you can understand what I'm saying. And then when you go in, you're entering this church. You're entering holy ground. And holy ground, how would you be sanctified to be able to be in holy ground? Treat yourself like that. Go and sit with your back on a rock or your forehead on a rock and ask questions. Ask the spirit of the earth, how do I do this? And then be open and let the first thing come. First thing is usually the instinctual, intuitive thing that comes. And then after that comes the thought, oh, maybe not. Oh, that's ridiculous. Yes. It can't be. But I always teach my clients, it's the first thought. And I'm not talking about the hardcore survival thought that comes out of fear, because we're not in fear in that moment. We're relaxing. We're attuning. It's an attunement is what we're talking about. Attuning into that station of Mother Earth. That my whole book is taking you through a journey, Spirit of the Stones, about attuning to the satsang of the rocks, to the wisdom of the stones throughout the ages. How to be embodied, how to be still, how to drop in to the deepest part of your being without reacting. Beautiful. Or go and put your back or heart onto, I don't say against a tree, but onto a tree, with the tree, and just breathe and imagine what it would be like to have the roots going down. You are the roots, you are the tree, and suddenly feel the strength of the trunk of the tree and become that too, and emulate. Attunement and emulation. I just made that up.
I love it. I speak a lot of attunement, but emulation, like it's beautiful. I love that. That might be a meditation.
Yes.
The meditation of guiding from the attunement to the emulation. This has been wonderful having you. I feel like we could carry this conversation for hours, and if everything that you speak about is part of your retreats, then your retreats sound amazing. You're in a beautiful energetic vortex in the world. And I shared with you, I moved here from Phoenix, and never made it to the Grand Canyon because every time my husband and I would literally get stuck in Sedona, and I just couldn't leave. And it was before I even knew everything that I knew now. I just knew that I couldn't leave until I had to go back to work, and then I would leave and go. It's really, yeah.
Sedona was holding you hostage. Well, he was already working on you like that. We only got her for a short time. Quick, let's get that. Let's do what we got to do with her, because she's awake. She's enough.
Yes, she has, and she's been calling me. And there's a whole, I've lived in 16 states, and I was born in Arizona in Tucson, and then interestingly enough moved back for the birth of my first daughter. And I've lived in Arizona for 3 years out of the 43 years of my life. And so, well, that's because we had a past life together before this one. There's this whole thing and so there's something there for us. And she turns 16 next year. And so I'm feeling into maybe we go back together. But I wanted to close with this idea of merging the duality into oneness, because that's really sort of like, I think a really great offering to end this on, because everything that we've talked about today, we've, whether it's the shadow and the light, or even the earth and us, like every experience is one of wholeness and oneness. And you shared, and I believe this is what your upcoming course is about, isn't it? Is it Stronger Than Ever, about the oneness?
Stronger Than Ever is more about what we've talked about, becoming an antenna and allowing all the craziness and the mental ping-ponging and pinball machining of all this ricocheting of energy and electricity, to be able to channel it and divine it down into the restful state and grounding your energy. That's what this course is about, getting you into uniformity, which is a
oneness. Yeah, the energy of the course felt very much like oneness. So maybe that was my interpretation of how it was landing for me.
Yes,
but I want to invite you just to share, as we come full circle, for the audience, for the listeners, just where we are at this space in time, this year that we've just experienced together, which looked very differently for everybody, and where we are, on a collective consciousness level, and sort of individually, but also together, with this idea of oneness. And I'm speaking to it from, like, if we look at the past year, like, so many things have happened, and we've all have had different perceptions of the experience, yet we are all in this experience together. So if there was something that you could share for the listeners with where they are to connect to this idea. I want to highlight this because I know that in the very beginning, at least I know for me, 6 years ago when I started, I had a sort of an accidental soul retrieval, that I was with the shaman and didn't know it. And sometimes the idea of what we hear of is shadow work feels uncomfortable at first. So I want to speak to it in a way to invite the listeners to know that the shadow is the light in its wholeness and its oneness. What is something that you could share with the listeners to get them to lean into the idea of oneness around the work that you're doing, and how it relates to kind of where we are in this space and time on the planet right now?
Okay, so when we talk about oneness, I think of dropping into the heart, because the heart doesn't have duality. The brain hemispheres, the brain has duality. Yes, right, the right side, the left side, the masculine and feminine, the yes and the no, and the mind makes its decisions through the dynamism of duality. And it always encompasses some form of judgment, in a sense, right, wrong, day, night. It's kind of like the polarities are really far apart to be swinging from one to the other. But the point in the middle, the middle line, the middle path, the internal corridor, the meeting place of the dualities, the namaste into the heart, is where I think is that oneness. So we're not operating from right, wrong, good, bad, poor, rich, I'm popular, I'm not. That's really going to create a lot of craziness and havoc in our being, which it has already. The division of politics, and this is good and that's bad. And there's a higher place, which we could call an ascended place, which is the oneness. It's called, in Indian tradition, it's called the Advaita, which is beyond the dualities into this oneness. Now, we could say underneath, I'm saying a oneness above, but in the shamanic realm, there's the oneness below as well. So it's not so much all up there, it's more the oneness below, which is the silence and the stillness that the rocks and the trees show us and the earth shows us. That's a grounded place to be, is a oneness as well, because the mind, the emotions, and the body come in line into the central corridor. That's what I'm all about. That's what I teach. That's what I am passionate about. That's what my course is about. It's like, let's bring it in and down and really reside in this place that feels like heaven on earth. the oneness.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Mm.
So
That's exactly it. The heaven on earth. It's not separate. It is.
yeah,
It,
yeah, and
it
it's not in the mind, folks. It's not in the mind. It's not in the mind. Of course, we have intelligence. Of course, we have wisdom. Is not of the mind. It's of the embodiment and the heart and the soul. But we have information. We have knowledge. Important, of course. But when you're looking at the oneness, it's a matter of bringing all that together into the one. You know, I remember got my first experience on throwing pottery on a wheel. I don't know if anyone out there has thrown on a wheel and made a pot or something like this on a wheel, you know, using clay on a wheel. But initially it's like, you know, you don't get the control and then it goes splat onto the wall, and then you try again and you hold it together and then somehow it doesn't hold it together, and then it splats again until you harness, until you practice and tone, you know what I mean? Tone your mind, focus in and gather it up. You know, shamanism is about that, you know, gathering the light and the dark. It's not about dismissing the light to go into the shadow. It's not about dismissing the shadow to go into the light. One is not available without the other. One cannot exist without the other. Why not stay in the center point? Forget it even about the corridor or the line. That's good though too. Brilliant. But that center point is what we are in the kaleidoscope of life, each and every one of us. So gather it in like that pottery, harness it in and focus. And that's why starting off with meditation, you know, you were saying about meditation, that's why people meditate and do yoga, to distill their mind, to still in their mind and distill it to distill their mind. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
It's a practice. It's a harnessing. It's a discipline. It is that.
Mm-hmm.
But
And it's
going out in nature is an easy way of doing it.
it is. Oh, yeah, it is an easy way of doing it. It's and it's there and it's always there and
Always.
she's always inviting us in so many different ways too, you know, the water, the trees, the mountains, the sand, the
The
dirt,
beauty,
there's trees.
beauty of the light sparkling off the creek and the waters and the glistening of the leaves. It's magical, magical.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. My intention for today was to just allow you to share from a place of being able to invite people into being interested into just allowing nature to help them to heal, and also, you know, to be open to the idea of the healing of shadow work as an opportunity or sort of like a canvas to embody ourselves in our wholeness. Because I think what I've noticed is that it's that there's this perception that it's separate from us and that it's this big, scary, terrible thing that I don't know, that, you know, I know that that can come up sometimes when they hear the words. I know they did for me years ago, and I've heard it as well. And so if we can look at it from the perspective of that, there is no difference really between the light and the shadow, if we're, you know, because it's really all just oneness. It is us. We are both.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of us. And so choosing to really lean into, I feel like it's easier for people to meditate and do the positive thing. But if we really, really choose to look at all of it and heal the part of us that is the sensation that is wants to be transmuted, then that is really where we completely, as you said the words, embody and descend before we ascend.
Yes,
And
and become more of ourselves.
fully,
Become
wholly,
more fully
yes.
wholly ourselves, so that there's no missing parts scratching at the window saying, me, well, what about me? I want to come in there too, you know?
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember, there's kind of a saying that's coming through for me that I don't remember what it is, but the essence of it is that one of the greatest gifts that we can give people, other people in our lives, is to allow them to witness us fully, and that's what intimacy is.
Beautiful.
And so I think for ourselves, the greatest gift that we can give ourselves is the permission to know ourselves wholly and completely, to embody that experience And even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it's kind of the part that we perceived as being, broken or fragmented or
Unlovable,
whatever.
unlovable.
Unlovable, exactly. But if we really give ourselves permission to love ourselves unconditionally, I
To
think that's what,
love that part.
yeah.
It's hard to love ourselves fully unconditionally, but to love those parts that we feel are unlovable, that brings us more into the wholeness, so that then we can love ourselves more wholly.
Yes, absolutely. And that would be unconditional love and acceptance. And
Yes, it's easy to love the parts we love about ourselves.
oh yeah, it's super easy.
I love I love myself. I love myself. Yeah, but how about if you love those parts you absolutely can't even look at? That's where the magic
Yeah.
is. That's the shamanism.
And that is where the magic is. And I think that's a perfect place to end this conversation. And
Yes.
because there really is nothing to say after that. It's like that's because as you say it, it just feels like freedom. It feels like, okay, I can rest in peace in
Yes.
this as
Yes,
I'm alive.
indeed.
So
That's
yeah.
right.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the
You're
show.
welcome. Thank you.
And I just want to invite you to share. We're going to share the link for your book, for your course, Stronger Than Ever.
Yes.
Your website is it Earth Spirit Wisdom? Is that
Yes.
okay?
It's
Earth
earth,
Spirit,
spirit,
yes, and wisdom.
wisdom.
I
Dot com.
love that. That's perfect. Earth Spirit Wisdom, the book, this
The
Wisdom
course.
of the Stones,
The spirit, the book Spirit of the Stones,
Spirit of the Stones, and
and
then
the
your
course
course,
is Stronger Than Ever.
Stronger Than Ever. Thank you so much for
And
downloading.
we'll have the links down there. Yes.
We'll put the links in the
Right.
show
Okay.
notes.
Great.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yes. So thank you for downloading and sharing this creation for us to
Thank you,
lean
everybody.
into.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Jen,
Absolutely.
for allowing me to be here and invite and inviting me into your inner sanctum of your own podcast. Thank you. And thanks everybody those of you who stayed with us till this point. Thank you so much. Blessings on
Yes.
your path. And I'd love to help you. And both of us, we're here for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Amalia. All right, my listeners, thank you so much once again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Aloha.